So you can go ahead and give us an overview of yourself.
Okay, cool. So, hi, my name is Conghuyen. I am currently a biology and biotechnology teacher at Piedmont Hills High School. So, I'm going to take you through my educational history because I feel like that's really important in becoming a teacher is how you got there in the first place. So, I actually graduated from Piedmont Hills High School back in 2016. So, this is where I first found my love for science. And a lot of that is due to my very, very supportive science teachers. Some of the classes that I took that I found inspiring in my career, in my high school career, were AP biology. Um, I loved I loved math. I was almost a math teacher. So I took AP Calculus, AB, and BC. Um, AP English Language I felt was really important. I think a lot of people who are very involved in STEM kind of discount the other subjects as being important, but I found that the skills that I learned in AP Lang actually helped me become a better writer in science as well, because writing nonfiction is a skill in itself. Physiology and biotechnology aren't AP classes, but they were classes that I found very fun and vital in figuring out what I liked about science. Physiology is where I found out that I actually don't really like dissecting things. And blood is very scary to me. Some of my extracurriculars, Key Club. I actually started the American Cancer Society when I was here in high school, and I was also part of the National Honor Society. For my undergraduate, I chose to go to the University of California, Berkeley. I got my Bachelor's of Science in Molecular Environmental Biology and a minor in Education from the College of Natural Resources. Some of the extracurricular activities I was involved in was OASES, or the Oakland Asian Student Educational Services. So essentially every week we would go to an elementary school in Oakland, and then we would help them with their after-school tutoring, which is where I found out that I really do like teaching, but I don't like teaching younger ages. And then some other things that I did was research. So research is a really vital part in getting my undergraduate degree. So I spent 3 summers in Lompoc, California at Vandenberg Air Force Base. So this is a picture of me and my lab mates over the summer. So essentially we would go into this 100,000 acre Air Force base and we would survey the trees for health. So we would go there, we would take surveys of some trees, if there were disease, what their size was, how old they were, and we would take that information back to the Air Force Base so that they could better concentrate their efforts in preserving the area that they're responsible for. And then during that year as well, so during the summertime, we would collect data. And then during the school year, we would take that data and those samples back into the lab. We would analyze them for any diseases. And I was part of that process as well. So we would collect the data in the summertime, and then we would spend the year analyzing the data and send it back to Vandenberg Air Force Base. And then the last part is my graduate degree. So I have a Master's of Science in Science Education and a single subject teaching credential from San Jose State University. So 2 things I was involved in from this time was the San Jose Impact Fellowship, which was a fellowship that focused on supporting teachers who are teaching at Title I schools, so lower income schools. And also the Climate Social Justice Program, which is something I just participated in this last summer. And that program focuses on supporting science teachers in building curriculum that is socially relevant. So it has to do with, there is a social justice component in science as well. So a lot of my teaching curriculum is based around how can science help people, and how can science help inform us better about how some groups are disproportionately affected by climate and climate change. Okay, yeah, that was a crash course of all of my educational history. So if there are any questions at the time, if you have any specific questions about my what I teach, how I taught it, how I got here, just let me know.
Thank you, Missy, for making the slideshow and talking us through your education so far.
Yeah.
So while people think of their questions, SAS kind of has like a few basic questions that we can ask
Mhm.
everyone. One second, just kidding me. Okay, so first one is tell us how you got interested in STEM, and you kind of did say that about in high school, but is there any specific point where you were like, I really want to do STEM?
Um, I think I've always been a very curious child. So like one of my earliest memories is going into the backyard of I was like 5 years old at this time, but I was going into the backyard of my house. And I really liked roly-polies. So I wanted to collect all of the roly-polies in my yard. So I in an hour's time, I think I collected like a big jar of roly-polies, like this big. But then it didn't stop there. Like I got the roly-polies, I brought them inside, and then I started Googling like everything that I could about roly-polies and isopods. And I think that's kind of where my interest in STEM started. Like I always wanted to learn more about things. So it wasn't necessarily like a class that I took or anything, but it was I guess just my innate curiosity for like the living world.
That's really cool. Can you tell us about a time you wanted to give up on STEM and how you persevered through the challenges?
Oh, one specific instance I can think about is college. So when I was at Berkeley, one thing they don't tell you is that when you go to college, it's not there's so many options. It's not just like you go into science, you go into like humanities. There's a major for everything, there's a class for everything. So it was my second year of college. And I just finished organic chemistry. And if you guys don't know, organic chemistry is notoriously a weirder class for a lot of STEM students because it's a little bit difficult. I wouldn't say it's like the most difficult class I took, but it's a different way of thinking. And I was juggling between the idea of doing something that was more creative. I've always also been a very creative person. I love drawing. I love art. I like to put that into a lot of my teaching as well. Um, and so I decided maybe I should try architecture or like landscape design. So I did one semester as an architecture student, and I realized that I hated being judged for what I did. And that's a big part of being a creative, is that you do have to be graded based on what you make, right? So decided not to do that, and went back to biology. Um, and I think that was the right decision to make. I think the one thing that I do love about science is that even if you get things wrong, even if the data doesn't come out exactly as you hypothesized, that it's still data. It's still science at the end of the day. And you learn a lot more from those mistakes and those failures than you do, the successes, right? And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you for that. I also relate with choosing between creative stuff and STEM stuff. It is kind of hard to pick a side.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I kind of want my students to learn is that you don't have to pick a side. Like you can be a creative and you can also love STEM at the same time. Um, you never have to choose one part of your personality. Yeah, you can have both. There's room for both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then why did you specifically choose biology and biotech to teach?
Um, that's a good question. I think, well, I've always really loved the natural world, and chemistry and physics kind of touch on that, but there's not as much opportunity to touch on the natural world as biology does, right? And if you've been in if you've ever taken my class, you know that we spend a lot of time talking about climate change. Like we take like a whole semester for climate change and ecology. Um, and I think teaching biology, you have a very unique opportunity to teach about where humans lay within that natural world. And it seems more relevant. It's very exciting. There's always something that's changing in biology as well. And I think that's why biotech specifically, I wanted to bring back the program to Piedmont, is that this was one of the classes that kind of made me realize that I can have a career out of this subject that I really like and this thing that I've always really enjoyed in life. And biotech itself has an application, right? The application of biology in the real world with medicine, with agriculture, um, I think it helps broaden my students' world a little bit. It's not just the things that we learn in the textbook, but it's like what we do with that knowledge.
Is there a part of your career that required a lot of math?
No. I would say the most you would have to learn is like statistics. Like I would say like statistics was probably one of the most useful classes that I took that wasn't related to my major. Because a lot of science, like especially when you get into like upper division classes or like a graduate degree in science, you're doing a lot of data analysis. And a lot of that data analysis has to do with statistics. What is statistically significant about your results, right? But I think when I was getting my undergrad, it is a requirement to take some calculus. So it's calculus that's related to life sciences, though.
Okay, that's interesting. So what's the hardest part of teaching in your day-to-day life?
I think I would have to say turning my teacher brain off. I think my husband can attest to this, but I kind of like I love my job, so it's really hard to not talk about my job all the time or not want to like think about how things like relate to my lessons. Like it'll happen a lot where like we're out at dinner and like I'll have a dish and it has like one ingredient in it that I'm like, oh my God, this is what I was just talking about in class. Like I have to tell my students about this. Um, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like sometimes like during the summertime, I like sometimes it's kind of boring for me when I don't get to talk about science with everyone all the time. I don't have that opportunity.
That's really interesting. And playing off of that, do you ever have any struggles with your work-life balance?
Totally. I think that was something that I struggled with a lot more when I first started teaching. So I'm sorry, I didn't include this, but I'm in my third year. I'm starting my third year of teaching now. My first year, that's all I wanted to do. Like all I wanted to do was like um lesson. This sounds so nerdy, but it's like all I wanted to do was lesson plan or like research new things that like I could bring into the classroom or like how I could do like fun labs in the classroom. And um I struggled with that a lot. Like I brought grading home a lot of the time, but now I'm getting really good. I think it comes with time, especially like when you're doing something new, right? It takes a little bit of time to adjust to your life. So I'm really good about using my time effectively so that I'm not planning at home too much. I'm not grading at home. Like I try to leave my computer at work as much as I can.
We've heard the leaving computer at work before as well, so I think that's something common that a lot of people will do.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a certain concept or topic that's been more difficult to teach students?
Um, I think genetics is quite a difficult topic to teach, not because of the concepts itself, but I think it's because where most of my background lies. Like my degree was in molecular biology, so like sometimes I struggle between like what I should tell, like how much detail I should give my students, like do they really need to know like all of these things that I want to talk about, especially in my biotech class. Like I have to try really hard not to get into like the nitty-gritty of like genes and like gene suppression and like expression and things like that. Because in my undergrad I would do a lot of that. Like we would know exactly like what genes do what in this plant, and like I have to stop myself from like, no, they don't need that much information. But other than that, I think I try my best to make the topics pretty accessible, especially for my biology classes. I had to realize that like a lot of these kids, this is the last and the only biology class that they're going to get for the rest of their lives. So it's not as important or it's not as exciting to them as it may be to me. So I try to at least I give enough. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be kind of difficult to have to simplify what you want to actually give them.
Yeah.
Um, as for any other questions, looking at my list here. Do you have any tips on people who want to go into your field?
Like specifically like science teaching, like being a science teacher.
Yeah, science teacher.
I have a few. I would say one is don't do it unless you absolutely love it. We are overworked and underpaid. But if you love a subject, if you absolutely love a subject and you love talking about it, right? Then do it. Like I love this job and I would do nothing else. Because I love how different it is every day, every year, right? Every day students come in with different, like, like different moods. They're in, like sometimes they want to work, sometimes they don't. Every year I have brand new students. So it's exciting. If you want something that's exciting, teaching is definitely a really good career. But unless you have a really good support system, um, I might avoid it. But I would say the first place to start is to ask your teachers yourself if you're interested in teaching at all. To ask your teachers, specifically the subject that you want to teach. Like if you want to do science, ask your science teacher. If you want to do English, ask your English teacher, because they're going to have a much different perspective based on the subject that they teach.
It's good always to look for mentorship.
Yeah. Another one is if you're looking to go into teaching, there's a lot of different options for you. A lot of people here at Piedmont have gone through the San Jose State credentialing program. But my undergrad also had a program called Cal Teach. I think it's available at UC Irvine and UC Berkeley, where you can graduate with your teaching credential in 4 years. So it's a special minor. But that's another way that if you really want to get into it and you want to know what it's like to teach, I would say start to take some education classes. Because they'll put you in a classroom as a teaching assistant. You'll get to see what it's like to be in the classroom and what it's like to teach.
Yeah, experience is really essential in learning topics.
Yeah, and like and teaching itself, you need to get a credential, right? So it's not, you don't have to get like a master's like what I did, but the credential itself, they kind of like throw you into the classroom. Like it's a 18-month program, so 3 semesters. First semester is all like learning how to lesson plan, what you need to be successful in the classroom. Second semester, you're like straight in the classroom. Like they throw you in a classroom and like, here, you got to be in there 4 hours a day. And then your last semester, you're actually teaching 2 classes, all by yourself. So like, I mean, like you have a mentor teacher, like you're in someone else's classroom, but like for the most part, you're doing most of the teaching on your own. So it's very fast paced. But that's the best way to learn, is kind of like they'll throw you in the deep end. Yeah.
And when did you gain an interest in teaching?
I would have to say probably my second year of college. Um, this was after I decided like not to do the architecture thing. Um, I've always really liked studying, and I've always really liked school. Like school is my safe place. Like I find so much comfort in like reading reading and studying about topics that I'm interested in. So a lot of my friends would catch on that I'm a really good studier. So we would form these study groups. And before a big test, we would always spend hours and hours in the library going through concepts. And they would always tell me and they would praise me about how good I am at explaining really difficult topics in a really simple way. And that was kind of the first place I was like, maybe I should go into teaching, because I think at the basis of it, that's really what teaching is, right? Taking a subject and making it like accessible to your students, or like engaging in a way that they actually want to learn it. Because that's also what teaching is. It's like you're trying to market a product that like nobody wants. And you're like, you have to like, like you have to learn this, and it's really exciting. And I think I'm kind of good at doing that. So am I the best architect? No, but like I'm good at teaching and making subjects exciting.
And why do you enjoy teaching high schoolers more than younger students?
Um, I think high schoolers have a little bit more, I don't want to say they have more personality, but like I think they're more relatable in some sense. Like high school, specifically freshmen, you're at like such a pivotal moment in your life, right? You're in a transitional state, right? You're going from being kind of a kid in middle school, and then all of a sudden you're thrown into high school, and then it's college, and then you're an adult, and like the ball never stops rolling after high school, right? Um, and it's easy to talk. It's easy to talk to high schoolers. When I think about like high schoolers and middle schoolers, I don't differentiate too much. Though, like when I'm thinking like younger kids, are you thinking like elementary school?
Sorry. I think I would assume, yeah.
Yeah, like elementary school. Like elementary school, yep, one, you have to do a completely different credential, but you also have to teach like math, history, English, and science. And like quite honestly, like I feel like I'm not as good talking about those other subjects as I am talking about science. Like this is truly where my passion lies. Like I love talking about it. I could talk about science forever.
And before you were a teacher, did you have any other jobs?
Oh my God, I had so many. I worked, I had a hard time keeping one job, and that's not because like I was a bad employee. I was a really good employee, but I like change. And I think that's why teaching was so good, because like every year it's a change. But when I was in college, I helped my family manage an ice cream and boba store. So I yeah, I know how to make boba. I know how to clean the machines, and everything like that. I also, it got me really good at like basic math, like, and inventory and things like that. Um, and talking to customers, right? So like talking to students is kind of like talking to customers as well. Like, you're asking them how their day goes, and you're, trying to get them engaged in some sort of thing. And then while I was getting my teacher credential, I worked at a plant store in downtown San Jose. And that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. So I get to talk to people about plants all the time. And that's another one of my passions, is I love plants and nature, and like fungus and all of those really cool things.
That's great. I think customer service jobs are really applicable in life skills in general.
Oh yeah, like I highly recommend. Like even if you like don't want to be a McDonald's cashier forever, there is some really, really vital life skills that customer service will teach you. So I think it's a rite of passage. Everyone should kind of work a customer service job. It's also where I learned how to clean dishes really fast, and how to properly mop.
A little more of a personal question rather than career-based, but can you describe like the best biology lesson or topic that you learned that's your favorite so far?
That was my favorite to teach.
To teach or to learn, whichever.
Oh, one class, well, there's two classes in college that I took that were absolutely amazing. One was my first ecology class. I took a field class, which essentially I got credits for going outside and creating a research project that I started from beginning to end. So it was all me and a group of my four friends. We went outside and we did a research project based on biodiversity close to creeks and like riparian zones. So riparian zones are buffer zones between creeks and fresh water and like other nature. And we did reports about how does that affect the health of those areas. So we went to different parts of the Bay Area, went out there, counted plants in like pouring rain. We were out there like um climbing like really high like elevations. Like we probably shouldn't have been in those areas, but like it was one of the first times that I did like real life like field work like outside, and it made me realize how valuable observation and outdoor, like being outdoors is for science education. And that's another big reason why like I do a lot of the outdoor stuff with my students. like if you've ever been in my class, you probably know that we spend more time outside than like any other class. Another class that I really liked for the same reason was California mushrooms. I took it under the professor Tom Bruns, and he's one of the most well-renowned mycologists in the world. So it was a really unique opportunity to take a class from him, and it was a very small class as well. Like I think it was like me and another like 20 students in one classroom, and all we did all semester was go outside, collect mushrooms, bring them back to the lab, try to identify them based on microscopy. So we would like take like microscope samples of them, try to identify them that way. And it was kind of like real life I Spy, because like once you start looking, it's really difficult to turn it off. Like now everywhere I go, I see like I point out mushrooms that like no one's seen, like these teeny tiny ones, and it's kind of a cool skill to have. Yeah.
That sounds really fun. I think doing research and studying in the field is also really beneficial to solidify the information that you're learning.
Yeah, real life observations. I try to do as many of those as I can.
Okay, are there any last questions anyone has? You can feel free to type it or talk it, whichever is best. Okay, if no one has any questions, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Mrs. C, for sharing your career and your experiences with us.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.
Bye.